Om Sadashiva Samarabham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tomagocharam Govindam Paramanantam Sati Guru Pranatoshmam Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. So we are here to give continuation to our text on Vivekachudamani, verse 32. So we have been looking into Maya, and as we understood, Maya is something very difficult to be understood. So the Upanishads or scriptures often say that it's beyond comprehension, intellectual comprehension. It's something that is not possible when we try to grasp, to really conceptualize and understand Maya. So it's beyond human understanding. But yet the scriptures gives us some hints here and there. The verse 32, it says, this power called Maya is a great wonder and cannot be rationally explained because it is neither real nor non-existent, nor a combination of the two. Maya is not separate, nor non-separate from consciousness, nor it's made up of parts. So everything we try to say about Maya is on negative terms. It's not this, it's not that, it's not this, we cannot really make much any affirmation about, Maya is somewhat this and this, We have to go by the means of metaphors and analogies and so on. So it's not made up of parts. It's also interesting because here and there we hear in our scriptures, in our texts from our gurus and so on, we hear that Maya is are the three gunas. So how many of us have heard Ramji saying that Maya is just the macrocosmic with the three gunas. It's the three gunas. Huh? So, but here it's also say that Maya is not made out of parts. That Maya is a power, and this power somehow brings about the impossible, which is a physical, material, subjective universe. But it's also objective in relation to us as well. It brings about this world, which appears to be made out of parts, and the building blocks of all the names and forms of the universe are the three gunas. Therefore, often we say that Maya are the three gunas. But here we say, the scripture says that it's self, it's not really attached to the self, and it's not really apart from the self. It's something that belongs but does not belong to the self, because the self is one without a second, one without any inclusion. But at the same time, as everything resolves to the self, Maya also resolves into the self, but it's not the self. It's not apart from the self. It's not attached to the self. So nothing is separate from consciousness. So, and then when it is this universe that appears within consciousness and not apart from consciousness, but yet, it's as good as non-existent. That's what describes Maya. Maya is that which is not real. When we hear about it, it's not real, you know? And then immediately we conclude, okay, it's not real, and then it does not exist. And then the scripture comes back and says, yes, but it does exist. It exists as the power that brings about the cosmos, you know, the universe. So this power, although existent, it's not real. So if it's not real, what is this? We know that it exists. We know that it's not real. And then if it exists and it's not real, it can only be what? An apparent reality. Okay? A superimposition, a projection, a mirage. Okay? The snake that does not exist, you know, it's just a rope. It's only consciousness, but then Maya brings about its glory as the universe, which is just exactly like the snake that we see in the rope, on the rope, or any other superimposition or projection. It does exist. A mirage, we know that a mirage does exist, but we know for sure that it's not real. Likewise, there are many other phenomena that do exist, but we know they are not real. So this power is a great wonder and cannot be rationally explained because it's neither real nor non-existent. It does exist. And how do we know that it does exist? By inference. We know that Maya exists by its effect. The effects are what? Ishwara, Jiva, and Jagata. Ishwara is an effect of Maya. Maya brings about this trinity, Ishwara, Jiva, and the world, the universe, and the field. So by seeing Ishwara, Jiva, and Jagat, we can, with the help of Ishwara, Ishwara reveals to us these scriptures. Ishwara is a living conscious being made out of sattva, pure knowledge, intelligence. The intelligent that constitute this intelligent order, intelligent design universe. So Ishwara reveals the scriptures to us, and it affirms that Maya is the cause of the universe. And why? Because the scripture says that consciousness is not a doer of anything. It's actionless. It would never be able to project anything. Consciousness is the principle, it's the fundamental principle or factor that pervades everything, that is the substratum of Maya and everything that appears by its power. Okay, so we have consciousness that does not do anything, and we have faith in the scripture. The scripture presents again and again the logic based on our experience of life, so that we realize that our conscious existence never changes and never does anything. It's a witnessing principle and is not doing anything. It's just seeing things happening, and there is something else that is producing this dynamic universe. So we know by following the logic, the consciousness does not do anything. Yet we know that everything that exists in the universe implies a creator, a cause. Any effect can be traced to a cause. If consciousness is not really the cause, because consciousness does not do anything, it's actionless, it's akarta. So, and then we can infer that there is a principle that is the cause of the universe, and this principle is known as Mr. Maya, the powerful Maya, the greatest, trickiest, that which makes the impossible possible. So this Maya cannot be really rationally understood, intellectually understood, because it exists but does not exist. It's not real, and it's not a combination between not real and existent, and apparent existent, non-existent, and not real. and real. So it's not a combination of the two. Okay. So having introduced Maya, the text now deals with the impossibility of defining Maya. It's impossible to define Maya. It's one of those things that we know it does exist, but we don't really know what it is. We feel that we understand the thing when we are able to ascribe to it a certain limits and assign a name that denotes those limits. So anything that we can really get our finger on, you know, we should be able to define that thing by its limits, by its border, its you know, by anything, by its properties, by its qualities, you know. So we cannot really see anything. It's so intangible. It's the most subtle thing there is in the world. It's Maya, the universe. It's the beginningless beginning of the universe. So there is no way we can ascribe certain limits and assign a name that denotes those limits. You know, we have no way to see anything substantial, you know, qualitative about Maya. But as Maya is a power of awareness rather than an independent existing entity, it must be understood in its relation to awareness. Then it says now that, but Maya being a power, you know, not independent from awareness, the verse says, not attached to awareness, right? It's not attached, it's not independent, it does not belong to awareness, but it's not altogether apart or independent, because everything in the universe owns its existence as a dependent existence, and all is on to awareness. So everything has to be understood in relation to awareness. And Maya needs to be understood in relation to awareness as well. Nothing exists independently from awareness. So Maya needs to be understood in relation to awareness, not in relation to the world. That's what it says. The difficulty is that awareness, the other difficulty that we run into is that awareness is limitless. What it mean? What is the meaning? I mean, this is something important for us to understand, because we say that our nature is not only Sat Chit, but our nature is limitlessness. Yeah? Ananta goes to our nature as limitlessness. So what is limitlessness? So what we are is limitless. So meaning to say, I am limitless. I am that which pervades everything, and there is nothing other than I, consciousness. There is no edge, there is no end, there are no borders. You know, there is nothing. I am the substratum of everything. I go far beyond all universe. Okay, this is my nature. I pervade everything the same way the space, which is just a small little thing, a small element produced by the three gunas as from Maya. No? So as Maya space comes, it pervades everything. Likewise, I pervade Maya, I pervade the space, I pervade all the object, and there is no end to my limitlessness. So because I am the substratum of everything. Huh? So that's what it means when we say that our nature is limitless. So the difficult to understand Maya in relation to awareness is that the nature of awareness is limitlessness. Limitlessness means one without a second. There is nothing other than myself. You understand? There are no inclusions. That's what makes us limit. If there were two things, if there would be awareness and Maya, and then Maya would impact awareness, awareness would be impacting Maya, and my nature as limitless. There is nothing other than myself. There is no end. There is no a point where I don't exist because there is something such as Maya. And then, and then there is a conflict, an obstacle. Oh, no, here's Maya, and then I cannot exist because now there are two principles here, me and Maya. No, I am limitless. Another way, a simple way to understand this nature of ours is to see there is only me. I'm the only thing, I'm all over. I'm all over the place, everything is only me. I'm the substratum. I am pervading everything. So Maya is a power of awareness rather than an independent existing entity. It must be understood in relation to awareness. But the difficulty is that awareness is limitless. It has no relations, no inclusion, nothing other than itself. And since there is nothing outside of awareness to which can relate, so how can awareness relate to something like Maya? We are saying like we need to try to understand Maya in relation to awareness, but awareness has no relationship. In order to have a relationship, what do we need? Two. We need two principles so that two principles can somehow connect and relate to one another. But awareness is one without a second. Therefore, the idea that we should try to understand Maya in relation to awareness is already a total contradiction. It's unresolved contradiction. So how can Maya's peculiar status be defined? It has a status that is absolutely unique, peculiar. Exists, does not exist. It is somehow not attached to awareness, but not a part. It does not really belong, but it's something that it's a power that somehow is inherent to awareness, but it's not really attached to, or part of awareness. So this is such a difficult thing to get our fingers on, So how can Maya's peculiar status be defined? Perhaps the best approach to a definition of Maya can be found by resorting to the analogy of the snake and the rope. Again, we try to really understand it, and then we have to go to our metaphors, to our analogies, to try to see the parallels and get an understanding of that which enjoys of a status of something that is not real, but an apparent reality. It exists, but it exists as an apparent reality. So it does not exist. The only way to understand Maya and the universe is by understanding that it's not real. The moment that we attribute reality to Maya and the universe, we are in big trouble, deep, difficult waters, So the only way we can understand is to understand that this is all a projection, and we're going to get there. So we know the rope, this very classic metaphor of Vedanta. So the traveler is passing by this small village, and then it sees the snake. Then, of course, we know it superimposed the snake on a rope, and it remains paralyzed. So the question is, what sort of ontological status can be assigned to that snake? So the snake is there because the traveler is paralyzed with fear. He is experiencing this snake. He's feeling, his body is trembling, his mind is filled with terror, fear. Okay, so there is a reality to it because it's being totally experienced. So what kind of status, ontological status we can give to this snake? None. So it's just an apparent reality, but it produced a huge effect. The man was like that, and even after somebody comes and tells him, take it easy, it's just a rope, it's still for a few minutes, the individual is going to be trembling. It's going to take a little while, if he did not have a heart attack and died, all for something that does not really exist. So it has no reality, none. Yet it has what might be called a subjective existence contingent upon the ignorance of the traveler. So the reality of the snake over the rope belongs to the subjective of the traveler due to this his ignorance of the proper perception of the rope as a rope, the misapprehension of the rope as a rope, made him project the snake. So what is the reality? What might be called a subject, yet this assigned reality might be called a subjective existence contingent upon the ignorance of the traveler. Yet ignorance is only the absence of knowledge. You say, okay, now it's real because it's due to one's ignorance. But then we say that ignorance does not exist. We have never seen ignorance. We never know when it began, because ignorance is nothing but the absence of knowledge. So how can we define the snake? So the snake is only the absence of knowledge of the rope, just as Maya is the absence of the knowledge. All is Brahman, all is consciousness, all is existence. So Maya is only the absence of the knowledge, all is Brahman. So if Maya is the absence of this knowledge in respect to the nature of reality, it's the absence of knowledge, means to say it's just the ignorance. That's why we say that Maya equates to ignorance here and there when we try to describe Maya. Maya is beautiful, Ramji say beautiful and attractive, intelligent, ignorance, and complex. So it's all beautiful. We love it. And it's amazing. It has all kinds of color, shapes, and textures and so on. But it's just what? It's the absence of knowledge. It does not have a substantial existence. Understand? Nature. When we try to define Maya, we are much in the same position as when we try to define that snake. Just imagine. We have this snake, and now we say, okay, so now what are we going to do with this snake? So let's first analyze this snake, like Shimayananda used to say, analyze this snake now, And if possible, let's extract some of this poison to analyze the poison of this snake. Let's see. So now what is the status we're going to give to this poison of such a snake, So when we try to define, analyze, understand Maya, we are in the same difficulty as when we try to define the snake and its poison and its species of snake and categories of snake and so on, because the snake does not exist. It's just the absence of the knowledge in respect to its true nature as the rope. So Maya is neither awareness nor it's non-awareness, nor it is something in between. In other words, Maya is not consciousness, and it's not consciousness, nor it's something in between. As the two categories are mutually exclusive, as are existence and non-existence. So Maya is neither consciousness, is nor non-consciousness, nor it is something in between. Consciousness and non-consciousness, they are both mutually exclusive. So as are existence and non-existence. We cannot define Maya because it is what? A misapprehension. Maya is just our inability to see consciousness as the only reality, shining through everything, all the objects of the universe, the sentient object and the sentient, yeah? We say sentient, yeah, because I always confuse with the Portuguese language. It's Maya appears as all these objects, and these objects, they may be sentient and inert objects. We cannot define Maya because it's a misapprehension, just as we cannot define a snake that is in reality a rope. There is a tremendous implication here. The indefinite quality of Maya must extend to all that's manifest through Maya. So everything that is manifest through Maya enjoys the same order of reality, the same order of non-reality or apparent reality. Maya does not really exist. It's an appearance, it's a projection, and everything that comes out of Maya is the same. You know, it's all an appearance. This is the this is the implication here. Okay, this indefinite quality of Maya must extend to all that is manifest through Maya. What it means, all perceptible objects, including I, the Jiva body, the mind body, the Jiva mind, all that manifests through Maya, despite of definitions we assign to them, actually appear in this twilight land, in this land of projections. You know, projection, of course, when we have this twilight zone, which is just like a lot of ignorance, you know, and very little knowledge. That is the reality of the universe here. Very, very, very few people can see through Maya and realize the true nature of everything as conscious existence. Actually appear in this twilight land where the proverbial snake lives and does not live. The snake lives, but it's not really living. We are like the traveler. So we are the travelers, the jivas. Awareness is the substantial, essential nature of the snake as the rope. No? Awareness is the rope. We are the traveler, jiva. The substantial, essential nature of the snake is the rope. And the snake that we see superimposed on the rope is Maya. Maya is the snake. Maya is the appearance. It is projection. It is apparent reality. And then Vidyaranya ends saying something like, not Vidyaranya, Shankara or Dayananda or Ranji. I think this is more on the words of Dayananda. Words can only take us so far in understand Maya, because it's that which exists but does not exist. It's just a misapprehension of what it is. It's the misapprehension of the true nature of things. You know? Phenomenon, the true fundamental nature of things is the only reality. So the only reality is the rope. The only reality is consciousness, existence. But we see an infinity of names, colors, and forms. So does anybody have anything to say about Mr. Maya?
I want to ask that I heard say that maybe Maya was created for, I don't know if it's correct, of course, but Maya was created for the fun of the self or something like that, because it creates the reality, because the self is actionless. So someone says, you know, that
Well,
I don't know if you heard that, but also Ramji says that I heard Ramji say that Maya is there is no meaning for Maya. There is no we cannot have a reason, no, for
yeah.
explain Maya. So there is I don't know if it is correct or what you think about that.
No, what I have to say about that is very simple. If we have already a hard time to define Maya, to figure out Maya, how about the motivations behind Maya? You know, the reason why Maya and what for Maya. You know, how come Maya? What is the purpose of Maya? We don't even understand what Maya is. So, let alone, you know, so how, why this universe? Why this projection? Why this misapprehension? You know, the superimposition on awareness. You know, why this mirage? Why? We don't understand the mirage, so much less the why. Right? But there are several stories there, speculations on why that that somehow they may pacify the mind if the mind gets agitated about why. You know, we don't know. Scripture do not go there. At least not the Vedanta scriptures. Verse 33, the unmanifest appears as the three gunas and is the causal body of awareness. Sleep, the state in which all the activities of the sense and the mind are resolved, is its subtlest, most subtle state. So this verse here needs to be somehow fixed up a little bit, because there are a lot of there is a lot of room for misunderstanding the way it is constructed. First, it says that the unmanifest, meaning to say awareness, consciousness, appears as the three gunas. So we need to clarify that the consciousness, awareness, existence does not really transform itself into anything. You know? Consciousness, that which we are, we never get converted or transformed into anything. We don't appear as the gunas in anything. There is no conversion between awareness and appearing with some. This is something that we need to look, because there are a lot of these concepts in other spiritual circles, you know, that awareness, consciousness becomes something, you know. So this consciousness, which is the unmanifest in these words, it apparently appears as the three gunas, but it did not get turned into the three gunas. Appears as the three gunas and is the causal body of awareness. Again, awareness does not have three bodies. You understand? Awareness does not. The universe has three bodies. The jivas have three bodies. Awareness does not have three bodies. Okay? Awareness does not have a causal body. So the causal body belongs to Maya. Maya is the macro-causal body. Everything exists there as potential, as seed, you know. But the construction of the verse says that the universe, the awareness, unmanifest, appears as the three gunas, and these three gunas is the causal body of awareness. Okay? And then it goes on even to say that sleep, the state in which all the activities of the sense and the mind are stopped, suspended, or resolved, is its subtle state. So again, it's associated in this deep sleep state as the most subtle state of awareness, of consciousness. You understand? But as we know, awareness and consciousness does not have any state. So So who has the states? Where do we find the states? We don't find the states in consciousness. We find states in reflected consciousness. Jiva's human consciousness, those conscious reflections, brings about 3 states, mental states in the jiva. And this deep sleep is the most subtle state. So this is sad so because a lot of the time, I'm sorry, because I run out, there is a problem with my internet, I'm using the telephone so to get my internet here. Regina, a Silvia não pode parlare adesso, ok? So in many of our texts, when we analyze the state of deep sleep, we say that there is a principle there is a kind of experiencing entity which is extremely subtle. We call it the prana jiva. Right? So a lot of the time we say that the prana jiva is an experiencing entity. It's a state, okay, in which the object of experience in that state is what? Is the lack of duality. There is no subject-object. It's just a kind of emptiness. There's nothing going on. The absence of duality, the absence of subject-object is the object of that extremely subtle state called deep sleep. And sometimes the scriptures presents that what is really witnessing there is awareness. But in some other page of the same text, it presents that the prana jiva is the vrit who is witnessing the absence of duality, Why? Because awareness consciousness in truth is not an experiencing, witnessing entity. It's a non-witnessing principle, a non-experiencing, witnessing principle, okay? But just to clarify a little bit, because this is just things about language, but we need to really be careful with our language. Maya is the upadi of limitless awareness, the self. So Maya is the upadi of limitless awareness, the self. It's known by inference as having the form of the 3 gunas. So again, I think we saw it recently, the concept of upadi. Maya is the upadi consciousness, associate to these 3 gunas, to this power, it brings about Maya, this, ignorance, duality, this diversity of object, all of that is a upadi. So Maya is a upadi of limitless awareness, the self. Maya is known by inference as having the form of the 3 gunas. So we can infer that Maya is just this mirror-like substratum, in which consciousness shines and brings about the universe, okay? And what is this apparatus, this mirror-like apparatus is constituted by the 3 energies. So these 3 energies is the nature of Maya. Maya is the fundamental 3 gunas, okay? So we know by inference as having the form, it's not really a form, but being constituted as the 3 gunas. It causes awareness to identify itself with the manifestation of these 3 gunas. So it causes consciousness, awareness, to identify with the world. But how can awareness, consciousness identify with the world? Identify means to say, see the world as real, see the world as reality, and so on. How? It can only do that by the means of Maya's jivas. So we need the jivas. The jivas are the one who are going to be experiencing what we call avidya, the effects of Maya, the effects of ignorance appears in the mind of the jiva as this personal ignorance, inability to really see, understand what's going on. It sees the world of name, colors, and forms and finds it's really appealing, really real and beautiful, and wants to consume it as a means to, find security, peace, and pleasures, and so on. It calls awareness to identify itself as the jiva, and that's identify itself with the objects which are manifest in this fundamental duality, subject, jiva, and the objects around the jiva, in the field. With the manifestation, which is the manifestation of these three gunas. Maya is therefore described here as the causal body of the self. Would you excuse me just for a moment, please? Just 1 minute. So it is therefore described here as the causal body of the self. So it says here, it is the causal body of the self. Maya is the causal body. Maya is this macrocosmic causal body of the self. It's the causal body of each jiva and it's causal body of the universe. So it refers as the causal body of the self, but we know that the self is not made of parts. It's a partless whole, okay? So it does not have causal, subtle. That belongs to what? It belongs to Ishvara, to Maya, okay? So here it presents a little bit like that. It's therefore described here as the causal body of the self. Maya is not directly perceived by the senses, but is inferred from its projections that occur during the waking and dream state, where subject-object relations occur. So we can never understand Maya, much less perceive, touch, feel, smell, see Maya. No, it's extremely subtle. It's the most subtle principle in Mithya. And then Maya is going to bring about the three energy, and then the space, and then the space is that which is going to accommodate all the more dense objects or elements. But Maya is the most subtle principle in Mithya. Yes, Line?
I'm having a confusion.
Yeah.
When it says that Maya is the upadi of limitless awareness, my understanding of unupadi was that it was an object in association with something else, and because of its proximity, there becomes an effect that is apparent, not real.
Is the attribute of something that the attribute of one thing that is transferred to the other.
Got it. Right. So
close proximity.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say that limitless awareness, there would have to be an object in proximity to call it an upadi, Maya upadi, there'd have to be an object in proximity to awareness, which means there's a duality prior to Maya.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
It does not work, right?
Yeah, it's
So much
I don't.
trouble to try to understand Maya. When we bring Maya into the equation as a power or a talent or something inherent to consciousness, but it's not really something that belongs to consciousness, because consciousness is one without a second. It's one without any parts or associations or relations. You know, when we bring Maya, immediately we run into this kind of problem. Why? Duality, as you said. Duality. That's why the only way to understand Maya is to understand that it does not really exist. You understand? It's an appearance. And the only way we can resolve all these contradictions is to understand that it's just an appearance. Okay? So keep that in mind, because it's the only resolution. This is the only way that we can resolve all these contradictions, you know? I mean, the previous verse, I believe, the previous verse says exactly this. It says, where is it? It says, in the following verse, the text offers a clarification of disappearance. Vedanta's declared function is to reveal the knowledge of non-duality, meaning to say, limitless consciousness awareness. But yet in introducing Maya, the text appears to establish duality, because it's sometimes we say the most fundamental duality there is consciousness and Maya. Okay, so but is this a real duality? No, it's an apparent duality. Here it says, yet in introducing Maya, the text apparently appears to be establishing duality, but it's not really duality, because Maya is not real. Maya does not really exist. It's just an absence. It's just a misapprehension of the substantial, essential, real nature of everything as consciousness alone. You understand? So it appears to be established duality. But in the following verse, the text offers clarifications of this apparent contradiction, apparent duality. You know, there isn't duality, because Maya is as good as non-existent, although it can be experienced the same way we experience the snake.
So a jiva can go ahead and assimilate as much as the scriptures allow, and then just say, you know, I'm a jiva, I can't go any further, and the rest I just let alone and don't worry about figuring out.
Yeah, I mean,
Give up.
I don't know if I understood what you said, but I can tell you that trying to understand Maya is not really essential for self-knowledge. You understand? It's not really necessary. Here and there it says it's very important to understand Maya. It's the only reason that it's important to understand Maya is because it means to say it's important to understand Maya as something that is just an appearance. It's not real. And everything that comes out of Maya is just an appearance. The only reality is you, it's I, it's consciousness, existence of the nature of limitlessness. That's the only thing to understand this apparent seemingness or apparent nature of Maya. The most fundamental nature of Maya is seemingness, or that what seems to be, but it's not. That what appears to be, but it's not. That's the very nature of Maya. You understand? The very attribute of Maya is this elusiveness, or how you say it is seemingness, you know? It's seemingness, we say? So it's therefore described here, Maya, as the causal body of the self. Maya is not directly perceived by the sense, but it is inferred from its projections, its effects that occur during the waking and the dream state. You see, Maya can be perceived by what? By the jiva, by inference. All of this, is relevant to the standpoint of the jivas, the human jivas with the intellect to be benefited by the scriptures. We don't have scripture for other creatures, only for us. So it can be inferred by the jivas from its projection for its effects that occur during those two states. In deep sleep, we cannot really see Maya in operation because we don't see the projection, the superimpositions of name, colors, and forms. In deep sleep, the subject-object relations cease. Because here it said that deep sleep is the state in which all activities of the sense cease and the mind is resolved. And this state is the subtlest state of consciousness, awareness, okay? So, but we know consciousness has no states. So in deep sleep, the subject-object relation ceases. Sleep is called the self's apparent distinct state. This deep sleep appears as the most subtle state, distinct state of consciousness of the self. But the self has no states. Keep it in mind, okay? The self has no states, which are objects of experience. A state existing within awareness. Awareness is there to observe, witness, to know, to experience a state of mind. Okay, it's existed within the scope of conscious existence. So awareness does not have any states. So it's important to bear that in mind. The self has no states. States are just objects. Because awareness, being limitless and complete, has no subject-object relations. But sleep in itself does not bring self-knowledge. So we know that first-hand experience. If we say that, if we would really say like, oh no, it's consciousness experiencing non-duality. It's consciousness experience the absence of the subject-object duality. They'll say, okay, awareness then is having a non-dual experience. No, awareness has no experience, has no states. Awareness being limitless and complete has no subject-object relations. We need a subject and object of experience so that we can have duality, can have a state. But sleep in itself does not bring self-knowledge. Why? Sleep does not bring self-knowledge. First, because the self has, if it was the self experience its own state of deep sleep, the self could not and would not need to get self-knowledge because the self is already self-luminous. The self is that which is beyond knowledge and ignorance. You understand? It shines on its own glory and its own knowledge, consciousness, existence, and so on. So there's no question of self-ignorance and self-knowledge for awareness. And for the jiva, the state of deep sleep also does not offer much of anything in terms of moksha or self-knowledge. Why? Because in deep sleep, our primary instrument by which we can gain self-knowledge is suspended, or it's just off. So in the deep sleep, our intellect is just unmanifest. It's just like in a potential, a seed. It's put to sleep. It's not present. It is in seed form. It is at rest. Therefore, it does not bring any self-knowledge. So the self-knowledge can only be possible during the state called the waking state, the state in which we can transact with this apparent reality that we know as the subtle world and the physical material world, and then we can learn certain lessons until we understand the true nature of reality. Maya remains in deep sleep, but it is unmanifest. So Maya is there, the ignorance is there, it's not manifest, and there is no way we can remove this ignorance, because the only way to remove this ignorance is by the means of knowledge, and we need the intellect. The intellect has to be fed knowledge so that ignorance can be removed. But in deep sleep, we don't have our intellect. So we cannot even feed knowledge to the intellect because the intellect is off. So we enter in deep sleep, we enter self-ignorance into deep sleep, and then we come out of deep sleep. We are very, very freshly, alive and so on, but we are freshly ignorant as much as well as we enter the state. When the individual returns to dream or waking state, these seeds sprout. These seeds are what? Our ignorance. All those vasanas, that duality. Duality is reality, subject, object. Duality. All of that sprouts again. And the phenomenal world is again perceived. The subject-object relations return. So that is. I don't know very well why this verse brings about this sleep state as a state, the most subtle state of the self. So it is the self just, everything is the self fundamentally. The self is everything, but none of these things is the self. It is just Maya's trick. It's just the state of deep sleep for the jiva. And if we say that is consciousness experience deep sleep, is because the jiva fundamentally is consciousness, and then we can attribute all experience as consciousness apparently experience itself, but consciousness is not an experiencing entity to begin with. You understand the tricks of these constructions? Okay, let's move the subject, change the subject, because everybody is really getting tired of Mr. Maya, right? It's not much fun, Maya, huh?
It's, I hope you recorded this session so I can go back, because I just
yeah, I'm recording.
realized how much more there is to assimilate.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
very hard.
This kind of logic, it's important to, from different angles, it's important to understand the real nature of Maya and the universe and our mind, our body, and so on, and to understand that the only reality is this shining consciousness, reflecting in my mind, in this apparent mind, this unreal mind, and so on. But there is another aspect to all these logics, that by following this logic, it's incredible exercise for our intellect. The intellect becomes sharpened, more and more sharpened, and it's a good exercise for the mind, for the intellect. So now let's talk about ourselves. We don't want to know of anything that is the not self. Remember, all of that was related to that guy that he wanted to know everything, and in the end, he wants to know. And in the end, I want to know, what is this limitless self? Okay, now we can talk about ourselves. So we can talk big and say, oh, now it's me. And then the guru say, now I will teach you the nature of the limitless self, knowing which one is freed from bondage and realize non-separation with everything that is. Oh, now we talk, huh? So beautiful. Knowing the self, we have known any for everything that needs to be known. You know this definition about Vedanta. Vedanta is that knowledge by knowing which one has known anything, or one is free from the need to know further things. Because as we know, to know things, to know objects, objective knowledge, to know phenomena, to know science, scientific phenomena, or whatever, So to know anything that is an object of knowledge may be good, may be practical, may be utilitarian, and so on. It has some purpose, has some values, but it never resolves the fundamental quest, the fundamental thirst or problem of the jiva. So the self, the nature of the self, or in other words, the self-knowledge, is that knowledge that solves the fundamental problem of the jiva, is that knowledge by knowing which one is free from what? Is free from ignorance, from bondage. It's free from the need to know, as I mean to try to, to fulfill, to make myself whole, complete, satisfied, at ease, So we want to know things so that we can feel, okay, now I'm satisfied with myself. I am a knowledgeable person now, okay? Now I'm enlightened. How many people in the world has this notion that enlightenment is accumulation of informative knowledge, academic knowledge? Oh, this guy's so enlightened because he knows this, he knows that, he knows. He may know so much. But if we don't have this self-knowledge, all of that knowledge is not going to satisfy. Whereas if we have self-knowledge, we may not know anything of the world, of phenomena, and we don't have the need to know anything because we have known that which is the substantial nature, essential nature of everything that's in there. So if you know gold, do you need to know all ornaments of gold? No. Because everything you look, you don't care that, oh, this shape serves that purpose, and this kind of people, and and that properties, and this and that, and has this name and that name. You don't need to know everything, because when you look at that, you say, oh, gold, it's all gold, So when you know the substantial nature of everything, so you are good. You don't need to know anything. You may even want to know something more, but just for fun, hobby. But it's not anymore something as a means to resolve or to make yourself feel adequate or okay or or superior or anything. So now I will teach you the nature of the limitless self, knowing which one is free from ignorance, free from bondage. Why bondage and ignorance are the same thing? Because ignorance, what does ignorance do? Ignorance, tell me, Claudio.
Ignorance create bondage, create how we say, bondage, no?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So ignorance does that. When we don't know what we are, and we don't know the nature of what we are, I am consciousness, and I'm not empty, I'm full. Full of what, man? You are emptiness. No, I'm fullness. Some other philosophies say that no, the fundamental truth of God or whatever, is emptiness. No, the Upanishads say, no, it's fullness. You are full of yourself. You are full. Consciousness, existence is the substantial nature, substrate on everything. It's the fullness of everything, because everything is only this. Understand? Fullness. So this is the knowledge. And when you know that, what happens to the mind? The mind no longer is attracted to the object to the extent that it gets attached to the object. Bondage. Bondage is a byproduct of ignorance. Ignorance says, oh, I am just an individual, little jiva, and I feel small, insecure, inadequate, and vulnerable, and and then what I need to accomplish, gain, get things, And then in this relationship, I develop what? I develop expectation, attachment, dependence, and a long list of difficult human emotions that go with it. Okay, this is ignorance. This is to be bound to samsara, to the objects of media. So when you know who you are, knowing the self, knowing which, it frees you from this attachment to the object and dependence. Okay, oh my God, no, how I'm going to do this? I need to push this away and I need to gain this other one here. And all the time we waste our energies. All due to what? Because we don't know that by which, I know the substance, I know the fundamental nature of everything. So once we know that, we realize the non-separation with everything that is. What it means that everything is nothing but the self. Everything is just me. There's nothing here that's apart from me. Everything here is just a superimposition on my own self. There is only me. And there's nothing here that could have an existence which is independent because I lend existence to anything that exists, Everything is just due to my conscious existence. There's nothing separate from myself, okay? And nothing is real except myself. I am the only independent, free, limitless principle that borrows or lends, okay, existence to other things. Confusing the not self and the self is the cause of our suffering. And how to solve this problem? We need to discriminate between the self and not self to put an end to this confusion. So our fundamental problem is this confusion between my true nature and the objects that appear within the scope of my conscious existence, my true nature. If I get confused with things that appear before me, within me, and then what happens? I get attached to those things, and then I get confused. I think that I am what? I think that I am the body, this body that we wake up in the morning every day, in the same bed, sleeping with us day after day for so many decades and so on. I am this body, I am this mind, I am these emotions, I am this, I am all these objects. And then it can go to the extent I am my career, I am my job, I am, so many things. I am my profession, I am my car, I am my house. So we keep identifying with everything. This is the confusion, confusing this not self with the self. I myself, the light that shines in this mind and then illumines the field of objects, And then if I get attached, if I get confused with the mind, if I don't remain clearly detached, not attached in my discrimination from my mind, and then the mind tends to get attached to everything that appears and get attached to the objects of desire and got also attached to the objects of fear because it's all the time attached. They're trying to avoid things, in the same way that we are trying to attract things. Confusing the not self and the self is the cause of our suffering. Discrimination is the only way to end this confusion. The text has been describing the not self so that the student can recognize objects that appear in awareness as being distinct from awareness. So the whole purpose of all this intellectual exercise we have been doing of describing the self and the not self and making this list of things that are the not self, we only list the things that we tend to identify more more, more often, more naturally we identify with certain things, like with 5 koshas, the 3 bodies, the 3 states, and so on. So we try to identify these aspects of our experience as the not self, so that we can break away from that misidentification, So we have been described the not self so that we can recognize, we can isolate the self from the not self, We isolate, we identify the self and the not self. So all the not self are the object that appears within my conscious awareness, okay? And then we need to remember every time that we discriminate the self from the not self, we need to claim again and again our true nature / identity as awareness. It's not enough to keep discriminating, separating, and recognize this is the object, this is the subject. Again and again, we have to do that exercise that Ramji invites us to do. I, awareness, I claim my identity as the subject. And I know that the objects are just experience, are just projections by which I tend to define myself and get entangled and bound to all those things. No, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not my thoughts, my notion, my emotions. None of this, I'm not my pranas. Okay, this is all the not self. So I'm making this distinction, describing the self and the not self so that I can, claim my identity as the subject awareness. But the student has also asked to be taught the nature of the self. Now, the text is going to try to explain the nature of the self. This is the easiest teaching there is. Because when we try to explain the nature of Mitya, there are so many attributes and qualities and properties, and so on. We get really in trouble trying to understand all the laws operating in Mitya. You see in our Vedic scriptures, we have volumes and volumes. It's all about Mitya. When we come to the Upanishads, it's just in the very end that's going to say you are consciousness and you have the nature of Satchitananda. Finito. That's the only thing we can say about the nature of the self. Your existence, consciousness of the nature of limitlessness. And then we're going to keep saying that in different words, but it's the most simple teaching. So the student also asked to be taught the nature of the self. The teacher is about to offer that instruction. So we are teaching, the teacher was presenting the self and the not self and how to exercise one's discrimination faculty, separate the self from the not self. But it's going to explain the nature of the self as well. So the teacher is about to offer that instruction about the nature of the self. He begins by saying that the self is what? Ananta. The self is limitless. So what it means, again, limitless, it's something that exists without anything other than itself. It's something that keeps going, find nothing other than itself. Therefore, there are no borders, there are no limits. It's limitless. Okay? The teacher begins by saying that the self is of the nature of limitlessness. It's limitless. The self does not occupy a particular point in space, as do physical objects. Now again, we're going to begin explaining a little bit more of the self. How? With negations, the self, we say, is limitless. Now we begin to say, it does not this, it is not that, The only way we can talk about the self, The self does not occupy a particular point in space. Why? Because space is just a small little thing produced by my Maya. Maya brings about the gunas and then the 5 elements, being the space, the first one, the most subtle of all 5 elements, the most pervasive. So, and then all these objects that appear in space can be objectified, you know? But the self, how can the self be within the scope of space if the self is limitless, you know, and beyond time and space, is beyond Maya? The space is a byproduct of Maya. Okay? The self is limitless and cannot be objectified. It's not within the scope of the time and space in Maya, you know, and it does not occupy any space in time. It's not in time, it's not in space. That belongs to all the objects of media. It does not, nor does it rise and subside at a particular point in time. It's not bound by time. The self does not appearance and disappearance. It does not appear in time and disappear in time. Oh no, you're crazy. I know every night when I go to sleep, myself, my consciousness, my awareness disappears, you know, and then it appears again. No, that is the common misunderstanding, because people think that the self, or consciousness or awareness is the human mental state's condition, you know. It's not. That is human consciousness or reflected consciousness that goes through three states. To renew itself, to refresh, revigorate itself, goes through those three states. Yeah? But the self does not occupy a point in space. It's not bound by time. It has no beginning, middle. It does not appear and disappear. It does not do that as all other thoughts and all other feelings, which are subtle objects. Thoughts and feelings are subtle objects that appear in time. They are all, you know, bound by time, right? If the self has no location, if the self has no duration, it's beyond time and space. Right? There's no location, has no duration. It's not limited by time and space. It's not within time and space. So what other limits are there then? Everything that's limit is limit within the scope of time and space. Just imagine something that is beyond time and space. The whole universe, you know, comes into existence, a period existence. We've seen this paradigm called space-time. There are no other limits. The teacher also says that when we realize that the self is limitless, we gain oneness with all that is Ishvara. The teacher also says that when we realize that the self is limitless, we gain oneness with all that is. I'm having a hard time to read this one. Let me read a little bit more. This description is figurative. Okay. Anything that can be gained can and will be lost. For gain implies time. We acquire something at some point that we did not possess earlier. If we are one with Ishvara by nature, that is, by virtue of the limitless self, that oneness cannot be gained. Okay. So this Ishvara here means Ishvara one. So the teacher says that when we realize that the self is limitless, we gain oneness with all that is. The oneness with all that is Ishvara one, because as Ramji often says, oneness is not sameness. Okay? Non-duality does not mean that, you know, I am one with everything. So we cannot say that we are one with Ishvara. Ishvara is the totality of the manifest, the totality of the field of all names and forms, okay? That is Ishvara manifest. We cannot say that we are one with every other aspect of creation, of the manifestation, but we are one with the essential nature of everything. Our oneness is with the essential nature of everything, which is the essential nature, essential nature of Ishvara, the Lord as well. So we gain oneness with the essential nature of Ishvara as Brahman. So the teacher says that once we realize that the self is limitless, but here we need to add something. The teacher also says that when we realize that the self is limitless, so if we realize that the self is beyond time and space, that the self is limitless, how can we gain oneness with all that is? Unless we realize that the self is limitless and I am that. No, it's missing the I am that there. You understand? So the teacher also says that when we realize that the self is limitless and I am that self, otherwise it's me and the self, I understand that my nature is limitlessness. And then I gain oneness with all there is. My substantial nature, my essential nature is the nature of everything as Brahman. So this description is figurative. Anything that can be gained can be lost. For gaining implies time. Yeah. So we don't really gain oneness with anything. That is another aspect that needs to be correct in that sentence. Because when we say that we gain, we imply that it's something that was added to me, something that was, no, we just realize, we don't gain. I like this word, realize something that was always there, present as my true nature as Brahman. So I just realized my nature as Brahman and my nature as limitless Brahman. And realize non-separation with everything that is. So what is the teacher saying here? So that's the part that I want to go a little bit more. So what is the teacher saying here? You realize non-separation with everything. That in which way we can say that I am everything? So if in Mithya, diversity, plurality is the very law of Mithya, So how can I say that I realize my oneness or non-separation with everything that is? So what is the teacher saying here? Ishvara is the total manifestation of all that appears in awareness. So that's Ishvara manifest. The manifest aspect of Ishvara. The Jiva identifies itself as a small part of Ishvara, as we know. Ishvara is the totality of all objects. I am just a small little thing among innumerable other objects. So in which way I can say that? The Jiva identifies itself as the body, and the body is a small little object in a universe that is so vast that has, infinite number of other objects. So in which way I can say that I realize the non-separation with all other objects? As an individual body and mind limit to a particular place and time. So this is the Jiva that still feels small part of the manifestation. This limitation is what constitutes the sense of bondage, of being small, inadequate, incomplete, and insecure. When this limitation is seen to be unreal, it disappears. How can it be seen to be unreal? It's because I understand my essential nature as consciousness, not as the body-mind. And then I know this I that I was associating to my body and my mind, now I am associated to the light that shines in the mind and vivifies, and animates and enlivens this body-mind construct. So now my identification is with the light. So when this limitation is seen to be unreal because I realize my true I as the light of consciousness, this limitation disappears. there is in reality no Jiva, no Ishvara for the one. For the one depends upon the other. So this is another interesting concept. So Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagat, they are interdependent. Without Jiva, Ishvara cannot do much either, because Jiva is this factory of providing Ishvara with what? With vasanas. Ishvara needs vasanas to keep, moving and recycling and recreating, reshaping this universe for all jivas. So it needs our vasanas, our response, our actions. They are all based on the ignorance of the true nature of reality, of course. When this limitation is seen to be unreal, this limitation disappears. There is in reality no Jiva and no Ishvara. For the one depends on the other. The notion of individuality cannot exist independently of the notion of an aligned totality, and vice versa. The ego only exists in relation to the non-ego. Oh, that gets a little bit more philosophical. The ego only exists in relation to the non-ego. When one dissolves, both dissolve. It is in this context that oneness with Ishvara is described as a result of the realization of the limitless self. So the oneness with Ishvara is the oneness with the essential, the same essential nature of Ishvara, the nature of the Jiva. Aham Brahmasmi, it means, my nature is the same nature of Brahman. My nature is the same nature of Ishvara, the Lord. My nature is the same nature of the universe manifest, because everything is only I, my conscious existence, as its substantial, essential, fundamental, true nature. Everything is just me, okay? Appearing with all these different phenomena. So this is the point. The oneness has to be understood. Oneness as the essential nature of everything. Okay? But the name, the form, the properties, and the attributes of the individual jiva is different from the name, form, and shape and attributes of all other jivas and all other objects, which is different from the attributes of Ishvara as well. Okay? Yet it's not as though two things are joined, but rather that their distinctions is seen to be unreal. There we go. It's not that the essential nature of everything, the oneness of everything, and non-separation is like, oh, okay, let's glue everything together. Oh, we all one. We hug the trees, we hug each other, we all one. No, it's just we keep things, we let things where they are. We see the names and form, but we see through the essential nature, and the distinctions disappear. We rather see the distinctions of names and forms are unreal. They are just names and forms for the same goal. It's all unreal. They are just superimposition. The word limitless needs to be explained because it carries misleading implied meanings. Ramji likes to present this point. Limitless needs to be explained because often limitless, that is often presented as Brahman. Brahman is limitless, and people think that this limitlessness means it's vast, it's something huge, big, and so on, No, limitlessness, limitless means to say there is only me, there is only consciousness. If there is nothing other than myself, so I just keep going without anything other than myself. But it does not mean that it's one thing that is so big, because howsoever big and vast one thing may be, it comes to an end, So what we are is beyond size, beyond small and large. It's just one without a second. That's it. It's only this one non-dual conscious existence. The word limitless needs to be explained because it carries misleading implied meanings, such as bigness or power and powers and vastness. The self is not big, The self is not small. The self is not powerful. Limitless means that it's all pervasive and not limited or modified by the experience take place in the self. But nothing can really attach or shape or affect or modify this nature as consciousness, my own fundamental true nature. I am the substract. I am all pervasive. You know? I am all over the place. There is only me, nothing other than myself. All this name and force, they are just appearance. They are like mirage. There is only sand. Okay? Nothing other than myself. None of those projections, none of this experience, this, madness that we see in the world going, dynamics of all these thoughts, feelings, emotions, and actions and reaction. None of that is really real. None of that modifies me. None of that touches me. None of that affects me. That's the bottom line that we need to understand. Nothing can really affect us. Joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, the dualities inherent in the not self, none of that can really modify me. Limitlessness is another word for what? For moksha, liberation, because it means that it's you and you are free of experience. You have recognized. Ranji often likes to say that it's relatively easy or easier to understand our nature as consciousness and as existence. Existence is a little bit more philosophical, but in the Neo-Advaita, spiritual movement, the common thing was presented is that you are consciousness, you are not the mind. All there is consciousness, and you are that, you are consciousness. So we have this, we relate well to the notion that I am not the mind, but I am a consciousness. But that does not free the jiva. So the jiva needs to understand that the existence, my existence is the same existence of every other object, even the inert object. And then I begin to understand the relationship between Sat and Chit, existence and consciousness, as the two sides of the same coin. And then yet the third aspect that Ranji calls the third, 1/3, he says that you are 2/3 enlightened because you understood now that your existence, the isness of everything is given by you, conscious existence. Yeah? And you just lend conscious existence to everything, even to the inert objects. They are made out of consciousness. They don't reflect consciousness, but exist due to your conscious existence. But that is not enough to free the individual. The freedom comes mostly with the understanding of our nature as limitless. And I learned that myself. I owned that understanding to Ramji. Before I met Ramji, I knew that I was the self. And that gave me a good sense of freedom, of non-attachment to the body. Although it was still, there was a lot of confusion still, And the most important thing is that I knew that I am consciousness, but the knowledge was not clear. And I was not aware of the implied meaning of this understanding, I am consciousness. The implied meaning is I am consciousness, therefore I am of the nature of limitlessness. Meaning to say nothing can affect me because, I am the substrate. I am just that which pervades everything. I'm like the space. Nothing can touch me, yet everything depends on space. We are in relation to the universe, right? So the understanding of our nature is limitlessness. Limitlessness is another word for freedom and moksha. It's the third aspect of Sat Chit Ananta. Ananta is limitlessness. Okay? Limitlessness is synonymous of moksha, liberation, self-actualization in relation to satsang that I had with Ruth today or yesterday in the Facebook. So it's moksha, it's liberation. Our nature is freedom. Our nature is limitlessness. That's all the same thing. Okay. Well, we passed the time. So we meet again next Thursday. And I'm going to rest my voice. And I talk to you again. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you.
We meet again, Ishwara willing.
Thank you, Arlindo.
Yeah, good day for you guys.
Thanks,
And
Arlindo.
I'm going to go to my bed very soon here. Much love.
Night, night.
Sleep
Bye
well.
bye.
Ciao.
God bless.
Thank you, Mark.